Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. Trust you had a great weekend. We had a bit of rain and a very pleasant time. I'll come to that in a moment. Let me start with the CHOGM 2018 theme, towards a common future, and focusing on working together to deliver a more prosperous, secure, sustainable and fair future for all citizens in the Commonwealth. And obviously there's a pivot towards the Commonwealth as the UK pivots away from Europe. And it will be interesting to see how this now develops and how much momentum it can gain. Home thoughts: the Aga Khan visited, and Hannah, Layla and I went to Parklands for the community Durbar. This photograph was released by the community. I used to follow His Highness's horses, and I'm talking about a period many years ago that saw His Highness win the Derby twice in 3 years. The horses in question were Sharastani and Kayasi. And I used to go to remote race courses, I remember, and I'd find him, he'd find me. And he did say once, "I hope you're concentrating on your work and not just the horses." And I would find him in these remote race courses. It was a lovely celebration. Everyone was extremely happy about it. About 9,000. We're about 5,000 left now, but lots of folks came from other areas like DR Congo. All life has just one home, the Earth, and we as the dominant species must take care of it. Dame Daphne Sheldrake, rest in peace. That was a tweet from Laurent Bell. It is one of my favourite places to visit, the Elephant Orphanage. I've read all her books. Her story is quite extraordinary. She brought up an orphan elephant, and then there's a story. She goes into the Sava, she calls the name. Now she's obviously a fully grown female elephant, and gets attacked. It didn't make any difference to her love for the elephants. The road is life, Jack Kerouac. And of course, Robert Frank interpreted that as this photograph, a long shot of night road, arrowing, forlorn into immensities and flat of impossible to believe America in New Mexico under the prisoner's moon. 2013, I wrote a book about the Nairobi-Mombasa road, which I said, for me, arrows into immensities and it's impossible to believe. This is a photograph I took at Lewa Wildlife, nothing behind me, everything ahead of me, as is ever on the road. This one was August 2017, when we took a road trip into the Masai Mara. And finally, this is on my way home, the Kiambu Road, on Friday night. The Grebi zebra of East Africa offers the best chance of proximity and also, by good fortune, the best facial aesthetics. I knew that I was looking for, it was all about the lines and the patterns in a small group. I knew as I pressed the shutter that I'd finally got the image David Yarrow. Political reflections: Russia's Putin predicts global chaos if West hits Syria again. Nasrallah added, he said the US military had kept its strikes limited because it knew a wider attack would spark retaliation from Damascus and its allies and inflame the region. The American military knows well that going towards a wide confrontation and a big operation against the regime and the army and the allied forces in Syria could not end, and any such confrontation would inflame the entire region. That is Sheikh Nasrallah. Badra Kumar, who writes in Asia Times, says US versus the rest of the world, the current global crisis has reached an inflection point. The developments over Syria during the past 10 days have been breathtaking. In the eyes of some observers, the cascading tensions between the two superpowers, the US and Russia, harked back to the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. But that is a stretch. There is no ideological struggle today. Syria is not Cuba, nor is Russia, the Soviet Union, or the world bipolar. The leitmotif, if at all, lies in geopolitics. Fundamentally, the precipitant situation has a lot to do with the United States' unipolar predicament. The failure of the wars in Afghanistan and Syria underscored that the US has lost the capacity to impose its will abroad, despite being the biggest military power. The problem is more deep-rooted than the rise of Donald Trump. The American elites, with very few exceptions, are in a denial mode regarding the decline of the US influence after nearly a century of global hegemony, and over the shift in global power away from the West after a history of 5 centuries of dominance. Barack Obama also faced a similar predicament in Libya and Afghanistan, in proclaiming a pivot strategy in Asia, in ramping up NATO as the vehicle for the new American Century Project, in the deployment of a US missile defense system to Central Europe, and in piloting the regime change in Ukraine in 2014, which turned the tide of the West's relations with Russia. Obama's master plan to resuscitate the Western alliance system and to re-establish the US transatlantic leadership was never in doubt. In fact, the Syrian conflict is Barack Obama's legacy. The new element that Trump has introduced is his virtual handover of the endgame to the generals. The only possible explanation for the ecstatic interest in London and Paris for the US, British, French attack on the Syrian regime is their collective frustration and anger that the entire regime change enterprise has collapsed. My piece over the weekend was War Drums, Putin cornered like a rat in Syria. What happens next? I asked. 105 newly minted missiles, 19 of which were new extended-range stealthy, joint air-to-surface standoff attack munitions, were launched by the US, the UK and France into Syria. My mind flipped back to an Edwin Starr song. War, huh? Yeah. What's it good for? Absolutely nothing. It ain't nothing but a heartbreaker. War friend only to the undertaker. Oh war, it's an enemy to all mankind. The point of war blows my mind. But of course it's very good for the war economy. Raytheon's share price hit at least a 20-year record high on the 13th of April. Raytheon makes cruise missiles. President Trump tweeted, "Get ready, Russia," because they will be coming nice and new and smart earlier in the week. Nikki Haley, President Trump's bellicose secretary to the UN, pronounced, "When our president draws a red line, our president enforces a red line." He must have loved that. I cannot opine on why Bashar Assad would use chemical warfare just when he was apparently winning all ends up. And frankly, nor can anyone else, because the international community, the US, the UK and France, started bombing before the OPCW, the Organization for the Prevention of Chemical Warfare, got on the ground. The background to this latest salvo was a long-stay visit by the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, a MBZ, Jared Kushner, Bibi Netanyahu project, to the US, the UK and France, which was described thus by Vanity Fair. Fresh off a kidnapping spree in his hometown of Riyadh, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman arrived in the United States last month. The Crown Prince and soon-to-be custodian of the two holy mosques is partial to tequila, we were informed via The Rock's Instagram page, where he said, "I look forward to my first visit to Saudi Arabia. I'll be sure to bring my finest tequila to share with His Royal Highness and his family." Also flitting in and out of the shadows is Robert Mueller, who has now fingered the president's lawyer, Michael Cohen. You will recall President Obama, whom I characterized as a financial and oil warfare specialist, wrestle the price of oil lower to bring pressure on the Russians and get the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to bend to his Iranian rapprochement, has now seen his oil warfare strategy flipped under Trump. Trump is lifting the price of oil, it's going higher still, to assist the Crown Prince into the main role by June, according to WikiLeaks, and simultaneously the heavy-duty Russian sanction strategy is placing intolerable pressure on the ruble. The Iranian rial and the Turkish lira are also plumbing all-time lows. The US is now back to its gendarme strategy in the Middle East, with Israel and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia acting as its two gendarmerie in the region. Let's hope the latest gendarme, the Crown Prince, does not end up like the Shah of Iran, another US gendarme who passed away far away from his homeland. You will note that I've not mentioned Yemen and or Gaza because these are non-stories unless the Houthis manage to land a missile in Riyadh. It was Jim Mattis, the US Defense Secretary, who fretted about escalation and the risk of Russian retaliation. Let's be frank, these tomahawks fired at will over Syria have put Putin in a corner. His entire political raison d'etre has been framed as a strongman. It is a neat twist that Trump is the US president that has taken Putin to a put-up or a shut-up moment. In his book from 2000, Putin briefly tells a story of the first time he learned the meaning of the word cornered. There, on that stair landing, I got a quick and lasting lesson in the meaning of the word cornered. There were hordes of rats in the front entryway. My friends and I used to chase them around with sticks. Once I spotted a huge rat and pursued it down the hall until I drove it into a corner. It had nowhere to run. Suddenly it lashed around and threw itself at me. I was surprised and frightened. Now the rat was chasing me. It jumped across the landing and down the stairs. Luckily I was a little faster. Managed to slam the door shut in its nose. Ben Bernanke was asked why people hold gold, and he said as protection against what we call tail risks, really bad outcomes. I expect geopolitical tail risks to continue to climb higher, lifting gold and crude oil prices further. Holger tweeted this morning, ruble drops like a stone as US seems to tighten the financial war against Russia. Daily Mail, former head of Britain's Special Forces, says Assad doesn't need to use gas because he's already won the war, but give May benefit of the doubt. Why should Assad use chemical weapons at this time? He's won the war. That's just not my opinion. It is shared by senior commanders in the US military. There is no rationale behind Assad's involvement whatsoever. He's convinced the rebels to leave occupied areas and buses. He's gained their territory, so why would he be bothering gassing them? The jihadists and the various opposition groups who've been fighting against Assad have much greater motivation to launch a chemical weapons attack and make it look like Assad was responsible. Their motivation being that they want to keep the Americans involved in the war, following Trump saying the US was going to leave Syria for other people to sort out. In this video, President Assad says the Syrian chemical attack was fabricated. This is Sky News. In this, British Prime Minister Theresa May has agreed to a parliamentary debate and possibly a vote on the bombing of Syria. Interesting article in Bloomberg, market fundamentalism tested as new economic storm hits Russia. The lesson is that high volatility has been and will be the ruble's significant feature. It's more volatile, I believe, than the rand now. Raytheon share price hit at least a 20-year record high on 13th April. Raytheon makes cruise missiles. War, what is it good for? It's good for business. October 2015, I wrote a piece, Putin is a geopolitical Grandmaster. December 2016, I wrote about the parabolic rebound of Vladimir Putin. These are two photographs of the 105, of two of the 105 missiles that were launched into Syria. That's from Quartz. There is a short link that the Syrian presidency published of him coming into work the day after. Russia said at the UN that the US staged a chemical attack in Syria. Russian experts found no traces of chlorine. They're also saying the Skripals were poisoned with an incapacitating toxin, and I can't possibly pronounce the name of it. Comey, in case we forgot about him, is says about Trump he's morally unfit to be president. This is a photograph of Baghdad on the anniversary of Imam Musa al-Khadib's death, quite a sight. That's from AFP. The 32-year-old prince was greeted as a combination of rock star and Winston Churchill, but Riedel also retained some skepticism. He's not impressed by the Trump administration's plan to make Saudi Arabia work with Israel to thwart Iran. Saudi Arabia cannot abandon Wahhabism and survive in its current form, he said, noting that the 11 most popular Twitter handles in the kingdom are those of conservative clerics. This is a diagram of the world's busiest airports. Dubai ranks third. They keep saying, I don't know why they keep saying they're the most busy. Let's move on to the currency markets. Euro dollar 123.66, dollar index 89.80, Japanese yen 107.19, Swiss franc 0.9630, the pound 142.72. The Australian dollar is also higher, 0.7773. Indian rupees softer, 65.475. That's all about the oil price. South Korean won 1074.12. The Rial 342.24. Egyptian pound 17.7037. And the Rand 1207.67. And this is in my buy area. The dollar remains under pressure as CFTC data showed hedge funds are the most bearish on the dollar in 5 years. This is a 3-month dollar chart. My stock remains at 88. Euro dollar, this is another 3-month chart. I think 125.60 caps this. We're currently at 123.66. WPP CEO Martin Sorrell quits after 3 decades at the top of the ad world. He really built an extraordinary business. It started from some kind of wire plumbing company originally. Bloomberg Commodity Index continues to climb higher. Aluminium surged through its wildest week after Rusal sanctions shock. Gold, last trading at 1345. Geopolitical tail risks will keep it bid. Brent crude, this is a chart from Holger, but we're now subsequently trading nearly 2% lower this morning. WTI finished Friday at the highest weekly closing level seen in the front month in 177 weeks since 21st November 2014. Last week's $5.46 rally was the biggest weekly gain seen in WTI since the 28th of July 2017. This is a WTI chart. We're last trading at $66.19. Let's move on to Africa. Sub-Saharan African countries will have to repay $6.5 billion of debt in the 5 years to 2023, up from $1.4 billion in the last 5 years. That's according to Fitch. Debt maturities appear manageable in the near term, but public financial management in the region is often weak, meaning that capacity to manage refinancing risk is an important factor. Look at this GIF, which is all about population and how Africa is really the big demographic story. If you look at this, it's over 100 years. The service featured prayers, tributes, and anthems that sustained those fighting for freedom in South Africa against the apartheid regime. This is the funeral of Winnie Mandela. South African all shares down 4.94% this year. Dollar rand, this is a chart from a friend of mine, Mel7054. He is an Elliott wave specialist and is projecting significant strengthening of the rand. Nigerian all shares up 7.02% year to date. Redcap's Yvonne Mahango massively slashed her forecast for Ghana GDP growth in 2018 to 5.7% from 6.7%. The Ghana Stock Exchange is up 32.95% this year. Interesting article in The Spectator about Gambia. It's a kind of real-life Tinder dream for geriatrics. Bitter rivals embrace shakes up Kenyan politics. This is a Maggie Fick and Duncan Miriri report in Reuters. Less than a year since Kenyatta was re-elected to a second and final term in a vote that Odinga called a farce, the two shook hands on March 9 after weeks of secret talks. A warm embrace at a golf tournament followed later. They said their rapprochement would mean an end to the violence, bitterness and political instability that followed last year's elections. But observers say the handshake signal that Kenyatta and Odinga, who is also in the sunset of his political career, want to join forces so they can influence what happens next. They say that it may show that Kenyatta intends to ditch a deal to appoint William Ruto, who is his deputy president, but comes from a different ethnic group, as his successor. Kenyatta has said he still backs Ruto. For Odinga, it shows he feels he has more bargaining power for himself and his Luo ethnic group as Kenyatta's partner. Everybody has had to go back to their drawing board and decide how they're going to run in 2022. This pact between Kenyatta and Odinga has redefined the race. Kenyatta has pulled the classic divide and rule move of the cunning president, creating as many potential alliances as possible in order to avoid empowering any one successor, says Nick Cheeseman. This will help him to manage Gideon Moi, William Ruto and others with their own presidential ambitions. My piece on the 12th of March referred to this as called the rapprochement. We should move from the old song of borrow and invest, said Dr. Jorogi at a parliamentary commission. There is less headroom for external borrowing and we need to move into non-debt financing arrangements like the 230 billion road from Nairobi to Mombasa. Kenya's banking sector is currently trading at an average price to book value of 1.8 and a price to earnings ratio of 9.9. That's from Saiton. Banking sector witnessed a deterioration in asset quality over the past year, with the gross NPLs in the listed segment rising by 22.8% to 197.5 billion. Among the banks, Standard Chartered provides the most for non-performing loans. I did an interview last week with the Standard Chartered CEO Lamin Manjang. Please take a look and a listen. Standard Chartered has rallied 15.384% year to date, trades on a P of 12.22. Jubilee released full year earnings per share, expanded 19.279%. Share price is up 6.212% year to date. Gross earned premium rose 5.282%. Full year other revenues surged by 63.261% to 12 billion. Result of operating activities up 27.022%. Full year profit before tax up 13.112%. Full year profit after tax up 15.081%. Full year earnings per share up 19.279%. Total assets 104.96 billion. Cash and cash equivalents at the end of the year 14.796 billion. Total dividend 9 shillings a share. When you add in the 1 shilling that was paid as an interim. So, profit before tax up 13%, total income up 25%, long-term business up 22%, short-term business up 83%. But look at this, total assets 105 billion, 47.195 billion of which are in government securities. It's a well-managed but cautious franchise. I would like better visibility on the unquoted portfolio. It's a long-term value proposition. This is the press release and infographic that they released. DTB Kenya is said to emerge as the winner to acquire Imperial Bank. DTB Kenya's share price is up 9.375% year to date. EAPC, East African Portland Cement, the East African is saying that in the past 2 months the firm experienced operational challenges, which at some point saw its production halted, salaries delayed, and cement stock almost run out. It is now banking on receiving $100 million in the short term from the Kenya government through a land sale to stay afloat. East African Portland is down 9.25% year to date. Kenya shilling is at a fresh 2018 high of 100.65. Nairobi all shares up 11.77% year to date. NSE 20 is up 2.51% year to date. If you're interested in checking into any listed share, that's the final link on which wrap-ups. Please dial into it. Thank you kindly for stopping by.